Welcome to another Clarity e-commerce video. This one's going to be covering product catalogs and the catalog system in general. This is going to be a really interesting episode. We're going to be talking about some of the different industries and how the catalog changes per industry. And we're also going to be diving into some of the different features that you might be looking for and some of the nuances around those features that are going to be kind of pros and cons of different catalog configurations and how this might best be suited for your particular use case. Well, let's get started. Okay, so just to kick us off here, we're going to take a look at a product catalog system that has a store selection capability. And one of the reasons we think this is really interesting is because the store selection or a particular location or possibly a warehouse selection or country selection, things like this, they ought to be able to drive the catalog and what shows up. They ought to be able to allow us to filter what's showing up in the catalog system. And this will be really important for users so that they get this kind of general capability to filter to what they are actually going to be able to purchase whenever they go to the checkout process. The other thing that this can apply for is pharmacies, medical applications, maybe restricted chemicals, things like that, where there may be a specific need to filter the content so that we're just showing the user things that in their particular state, for example, or jurisdiction, they would be able to access things and not show them things that they wouldn't. The other thing that we'll commonly do is set up quoting so that if someone isn't definitely going to be restricted, but there's a potential, we can go through a quoting process, or possibly if there's going to be the need to possibly customize something, etc., we can still show it in the catalog, but we're going to have to go through some kind of a process or workflow in order to give them access to the full purchasing steps in their checkout. Now, the other thing that's really interesting about this particular catalog is here you can see we're also showing the option to ship to home and ship to store, and we're actually directly indicating whether or not that's an option. Outside of that, you can see that this is a pretty typical catalog view where there are a list of applied filters. We've got the ability to expand and collapse in different categories in this case. And then we also have the ability to filter based on price information instead of just specific categories. And then we also, again, have the ability to compare items as well. And this is something that's really key for different catalog systems. Being able to compare items can really quickly give the user access to information they need to make a purchasing decision. We also, on this catalog, have a check inventory. So this is kind of interesting. This would typically be something that we would see as just an inventory list. Whether or not it's in stock or not, maybe an inventory count rather. And then in this case, though, because this is a buy online, pick up in store opportunity or buy online, ship to store kind of a thing, they wanted the ability to check the inventory. So you can click on the check inventory and then you can see if we go to the right page, we'll get a pop-up like this that allows them to determine what the inventory might be in a nearby location. So you can see that they're able to basically look at their selected store and whether or not the item is in stock in that selected store. And then they can also do a search for other nearby stores and see if the item is in stock there. So this is kind of an interesting inventory check for this particular product catalog view. And ultimately, this is a representation of what you might see in a buy online, pick up in store. There are a couple more of those that we're going to go through today. So it'll be interesting to see kind of the differences depending on the industry and how the client wanted this represented within their particular catalog system. Okay, so let's take a look at another example of buy online, pick up in store. Okay, so in this example of buy online, pick up in store, we're looking at a selection first before someone can view the catalog. So this particular workflow is focused around limiting the view to only what's available based on a store selection, or in this case, it's called a yard. Now, once a yard is selected, then we can go to the next view here, which is going to show the particular yard and just some high-level details about the yard itself, and then what's available at that location. Now, in this particular case, you can see that we have the opportunity to add something to a truck. So this is not necessarily a typical delivery model. This is going to be essentially a container that we're trying to fill, or in this case, a truck. So we're going to be wanting to present to the user this opportunity to fill a truck and make it so that they get the optimized freight and fulfillment cost by getting to that certain level of quantity selection, etc. Now, here you can see this doesn't really have a major capability around filtering. That really wasn't the main objective here for this particular client. There were just a handful of items in the catalog that someone would be able to find and search on. But this would definitely be an opportunity for this particular account, would be to have a nice search filter added to their catalog. So we think that's an opportunity here. If you then go in and you look at the details of the kind of catalog itself, you can see though that there's a little bit more drill down on this category view where we're kind of getting into specific category of items, and then we can actually get into a little bit more filtering capability. And then as we get into a specific item, you can see that we actually have the ability to sort and get into different kind of variations of a master item. So here we're saying that we have a track spike and there are different sizes for that track spike. And this is kind of a unique grid view that the user can present. So you can see that they have the opportunity to see the stock of these items, the per mile of track, which is kind of interesting, and then per keg of 100 pounds. And then they've got just basic information about the product itself. They can go to the product details page, but they can also order and add items to their cart from the catalog itself. So they're on the catalog and it's really easy for them to add items to their order. And this is pretty interesting. They can actually see who the contact person is that they would get in touch with. This is a B2B bulk order type of scenario. And whenever they're logged in, they can actually see that they have to contact to make this order, and the system is going to automate that process. So it's kind of an interesting way to go. This is relatively complex, but this is also going to tend to be for B2B type of orders that are large bulk orders. So it makes sense. You don't want to fulfill the wrong items and have to do a return that's really expensive. Okay, let's take a look at a few more examples now of other catalogs that are using this buy online, pick up in store type of model. Okay, so this is another interesting example. This isn't quite buy online, pick up in store. This is buy online and possibly inspect before buying online and basically complete an auction for a home. Now, this is kind of the same idea in a lot of ways. We've got the ability to do a search based on a zip code, and we're going to take advantage of things like a just kind of overall search, radius search, etc., and then look at the data within the database to determine, what inventory shows up. In this case, it's houses that are for sale. Now, one of the interesting things about this presentation model is it's really similar to the buy online, pick up in store, or other forms of buy online, ship to store, that kind of a thing. But in this particular case, what's really interesting is we have this kind of scrollable map that changes the search grid on the left based on grabbing and scrolling the map. So that's a pretty nice way to go if you're looking for something that's physically located on the map. And there are other scenarios where this applies. If you're looking for automobiles that are for sale, for example, or possibly large physical items that require fulfillment or moving, etc., it can be really helpful to see those displayed based on where they're physically located in order to sell them. And there's a lot of costs related to fulfillment. But in this case, the other thing that's really interesting about the homes for sale is you can see that this is a heavily modified presentation of this kind of standard grid. So the big takeaway here is that any of the grid systems and presentation models can be modified per category or per product type that's shown in the grid, in this catalog grid system. And just in general, with the search results and the searching capability within the catalog system, it needs to be possible to really cater it. And take a look at this in detail, because you can see here that we even have specific auction dates. We have nuances of the actual auction and updates that are going to occur on the auction, as well as the ability to save this auction in this case, and do just basic sorting and filtering based on these different variant selections. So you can just kind of see some of these examples of the selections that can be made, and I'll just quickly go through these so you can see them. And these can be simple selections or they can be more complex selections. But the bottom line is that for each category or subcategory within your set of products, as well as just type, within the categories, we can have a different presentation mode. So you can have a site with a search catalog, a product catalog that has the ability to present in different formats based on the category and subcategory. In particular, this is really important if you're looking at different categories that have literally different attribute types for the different products. It needs to be dynamic, and we need to be able to specify the ordering of those filters that are going to show up. So we'll talk about that next, and let's go ahead and dive into a few examples that show that capability. Okay, so this particular catalog that we're looking at, you can see is kind of a classic presentation where we're looking at kind of an Amazon-like catalog, and we have the ability to see the different related categories, the different product features, and then we can essentially see a long list of features that we can filter on. And the list just kind of goes on and on. And this is all dynamic. So the content on the left in the features, in the supplier features, really in any kind of mode of filtering that we want to look at, it can pull in dynamically. We can also do things where we are looking at the analytics on the site, the built-in analytics within the catalog itself to determine what people are using to filter on, and then progress those most often used filters to the top of the list and be able to essentially employ machine learning capabilities to be able to automate these kind of progressions toward more user kind of use to drive the actual filtering that's showing up on the page for the general user. Now, the other thing that you'll see here is that the filtering doesn't just stop there. We have kind of a left side nav filtering, but then we also have filtering based on products or suppliers. This is kind of interesting, this concept of depth of filtering to be able to drill down into multiple different kind of categories and areas of the catalog itself. And this just makes it a little bit easier for the user to kind of separate out where the different filters are and what they're doing. This particular filter also has a minimum order. For these particular catalog items, some of these items have a large minimum order quantity. So it's really important for these users to be able to set a just kind of minimum order that's required so they can see if it's within their budget range. The other thing that you'll see here is we also have details within the search results that are pretty standard, but most of this catalog itself is going to be driving a contact to the supplier. So this is going to be driving an interaction between the buyer and the seller. So this is a true marketplace type of model. And you can see that we have a different view here that in the list view shows a lot more detail about the product itself. And we can also see details about the supplier. So we can actually see if the supplier was on-site checked in this case, whether or not they were rated a certain level, in this case, a gold supplier, if it's an A and V check, and you can just kind of go down the list. You can even see things like the response rate and the transaction level during a certain period of time, etc. So this is a really nice way to present the content. You can also see that we have related products that are showing up, as well as personalized marketing that would show up possibly for different suppliers who want to promote their items within this marketplace. So this is a really cool way to present the content to the user and allow them to really quickly see, what the different filters are and get different views so they can dig into the products. And then in this case, we're looking at the supplier search. So we're actually showing a search for suppliers first, and then someone can then look at their products that are associated to that particular supplier. This is a really interesting way to go too. And you can see this a lot on some of the larger marketplaces. Once someone has found a supplier that they trust and that they feel comfortable working with, that they deliver on their items, etc. Well, it's a great idea to be able to promote that supplier within the marketplace and allow them to continue to serve their customer base. So this is a great way to kind of allow these different suppliers to present some of their qualities that make them stand out from the rest of the competition. In addition to showing basic things like their experience, their staff, the number of QC specialists that you're seeing here, it's also going to be helpful to show, in some cases, the reviews and possibly the reviews over time. So you can kind of see an acceleration or deceleration for those particular suppliers in their performance within the market. You can also see that, again, we've got this kind of drive toward contacting the supplier, and we can also add them to a compare or favorites. This is very similar to what we can do here. Whenever we're looking at a product itself, we can actually do an add to compare, and then we can drill down and see similar products just by clicking on this specific product. So there's some really nice opportunities here. You may notice too that we're using sponsored listings for some of the top listings. And then for additional listings, these are going to be more organic. So once again, this is just a really nice example of a pretty detailed catalog and filtering with a lot of advanced capabilities within the catalog itself. Okay, now let's take a look at a simpler example, but that's catered for a particular industry focus. Okay, so this particular catalog is a much simpler catalog, but here you can see it with actual product data and a little bit more information that kind of displays the filtering and how it would work kind of off the shelf in a simple scenario. So this data that you're seeing is coming in from the ERP system, and the ERP system in this particular case is also accumulating these attributes and categories based on criteria that is set within the ERP. And we either bring the data into the e-commerce system to keep behind the scenes, or we bring it in and we show it as an attribute for filtering. Now, this is on a category level, so different attributes are going to come in and show as filters based on the category or subcategory and what's set as show as filter on the ERP level. So the customer is able to control this within a singular location and then drive that data up to the e-commerce site through the integrations. So that's a pretty nice capability so that there's just a single source of truth for this information. Now, the other thing that's really interesting about this particular presentation style is we can see that we have search, applied filters, we have attributes and categories, as well as price range. But the other in brands, for example, but the other thing that's really interesting about this one is we have the requirement for some of these items to have to sign in to get the pricing. So you can see that's dynamic based on the items. So I don't have to sign in for all of these. This particular item actually has the pricing without signing in. These require signing in. So this could be for competitive reasons so that we're not giving away the information to a competitor, or just to help with the marketing engagement and possibly giving the customer a specific price that they're going to get. So it can be confusing if we're showing different prices online and someone actually should receive a discount if they sign in. So we want to be able to show them the correct pricing and make sure that we're dealing with any other reasons to not show the pricing unless someone signs in. Very, very doable with the Clarity e-commerce platform off the shelf. The other interesting thing about these guys is they have a very nice presentation that's clean for both the list view and the grid view that you can see here. Just a really nice overall presentation from this catalog. Okay, let's take a look at some more examples now. Okay, so with this example, this is a really standard presentation style, and you can see this matches some of the styles that we've been showing so far. But in this particular case, you're seeing kind of a boxier style of presenting the information, and you're seeing more of a kind of generic view of what might be available. So this can be really helpful just to kind of explain some of the options. So here you can see basically an unlimited category, subcategory structure that we can present. And we can do this in a way that it ends up looking nice on the screen. Usually it's a good practice to not go too deep with the category, subcategory structure. But here you can see 3 levels. And of course, this can go much deeper as far as the subcategory tree structure. We also have price ranging that is dynamic. So we can present different price ranges based on the filters that are selected. And these are calculated dynamically. And we also have a nice little count so folks can see if I'm going to run the filter on 500 to 999, I'm only going to get 13 items back. And then similarly, I can drill down into all the attributes that are set to be filterable. So all of the products have the ability to set unlimited numbers of attributes of different types of data. Think of these as custom fields that can be added to products. Product types of a certain kind or products within a certain subcategory or category can automatically have these types and attributes applied to them. And we can go ahead and add this data dynamically based on an ERP integration. So ultimately, getting the data into the system can come from a source of truth, and it can be inherited from a category or a type of product. And then ultimately, whenever we're presenting what is filterable, we may not want to include every single attribute or custom field within a particular set of products. So we may want to dynamically just show a few of those that we know are important for this particular category. So here you can see that we're looking at material, color, hours, and genre. Now, the other thing that we want to point out here is that this capability for the catalog itself includes a lot of things that you may not see in some of the other examples. This includes showing a kind of visual indicator of stock levels. So we've got green for in stock, red is out of stock, and then yellow is back ordered. And we have a little rollover icon tooltip so they can get more information about that. We're also showing the price, and then if there's a discount, we're showing the percentage off, which is really nice. And then we just generally have this nice rollover where if you want to turn it on, and this is just an example, the user can compactly see whether or not they can add to favorites, add to wish list, add to compare, or add to in stock alert in this case, because it's out of stock. And you can see for the one that's in stock, we don't have that capability because it's not necessary. So these are just options that you have that you can turn on so you can have a nice compact presentation where when you roll over, you get these additional options. Okay, now let's take a look at another example of a more specific product catalog within an industry use case. Okay, so this particular catalog is pretty interesting. This is for a medical bulk ordering portal where the actual catalog is dynamic based on the customer who's logged in. So this particular customer has a contact and they have a vendor that they're shopping for. You can see there's even a promo area, and then they can come in and search based on a dynamic lookup field. And this is going to search on multiple fields. So as they start typing, it's going to filter the list of items that they have associated with their particular account. Now, this is pretty cool because the actual presentation has a rollover so they can see the visual of the item itself, but they also can see some pretty interesting things on the just overall kind of criteria for these particular items, as well as their modality and their ability to get it delivered in a certain format. So we have next day, we have ground, and then we have other forms of shipping that are available. And the other really helpful thing for this particular industry is they can do bulk ordering where they can literally add multiple items from the same catalog. So really interesting style of presentation. You can see that there are some disadvantages to this. It's simple, but it doesn't necessarily include the full featured set of filters. But for this particular use case, they don't really need that. They just need to be able to type a few things in to filter the list that are assigned to them as an account. Okay, now let's take a look at another example as well. Okay, so this is a pretty interesting catalog because this particular use case is looking at containers and truckloads that we're working to fill up. And you can see that we have a pretty nice kind of traditional search. We have some filters and we have applied filters in a list. And just kind of as you would expect, we have the ability to expand and collapse some of these different filters. And it's got the ability to look at custom fields with these attributes as well as other nuances. But over here on the right, we're seeing this kind of sticky bar that floats down whenever we're going through the list of items. And we can go ahead and see what the capacity is on these different containers and then what the load is so that we can optimize our load. This is just a really cool presentation style so that the user can kind of see what they need to add to their cart in order to complete these very large bulk orders that are going to be intermodal. They're going to be shipped via truckload or freight train or a container type of shipping model. And this can be really expensive from a fulfillment perspective, especially with a lot of fulfillment costs having gone up recently. This can be quite helpful to see how to optimize not just the cost of the items, but also the fulfillment. Okay, let's take a look at another example now. This is going to be a more detailed auction example. Okay, so this is a really interesting presentation style because just to be able to get into the auction view, we have to go through an approval process. So here you can see a modal that's showing up where they have to select a credit card or add a credit card, a payment method if there isn't one already. And then they can check the items here that show that they're tax exempt or not, and that they are agreeing to the terms and they have to agree to the terms and conditions in order to go ahead and put a bid in place. So this is just kind of like a prerequisite that you'll typically see with auctions. Depending on the level of auction, this could be an even bigger thing where we're putting an escrow account in place before they can bid. They may have to sign a legal document where we can integrate DocuSign or our own kind of native signing capability, e-sign capabilities, etc. So now once they have gone in and done that registration process, then they're going to be able to see the auction. And whenever they see the auction view, there are different presentation styles. And here you can see this is a pretty nice, clean list of categories, sellers, seller ratings, bids, and then they can choose a date range or essentially a timeline filter as well. But then the actual auction has a pretty nice presentation where the photos of the products or the auction itself could be multiple items. They are split out so the user can quickly, at a glance, get a view of multiple images without having to go to the product details page. They also have the ability to see the location and the items within the auction and then the time for the auction. And they can set a filter, a notification. And you can see, we'll show later what that notification looks like. Okay, so here you can see what the notification looks like. So they can actually get a reminder. In this case, they're getting a reminder of when the auction is going to end. So they can choose what their preferred method of notification is and then add their information specific to this notification so that we can notify them. And they can also add additional information so there are multiple forms of notification. Okay, so we also have the ability to specify whether or not there are affiliates, and the affiliates can have their own landing page to be able to help promote the catalog. And this is really cool because affiliates could be branded, they could be heavily promoted, and we're going to want to be able to show the items in the catalog, either restricted for a particular affiliate or items in the catalog that are just branded essentially in some format based on it being an affiliate, or just generally be able to track that it was an affiliate landing page that the users went to. But ultimately, this gives some credit to that affiliate. It kind of helps them with their credibility with this presentation. And then we're just using the same base set of data that we normally would within this catalog view. But it's a really nice, crisp presentation style. Then whenever we're in the auction listings, we can also show a little bit more information about the auction or just present it in a more kind of compact fashion and allow the user to see things in a really clear version, especially for auctions where we might have multiple countdowns occurring. This is just a really nice way to go so they can sort and filter really easily. Okay, and then the other thing that we can do is show the items within an auction. In this case, there are multiple items within an auction, and then the user can see the seller info, terms and conditions, the fulfillment information, and again, they can add this to their calendar, and they do have to get approved in order to bid. So they can kind of come in and see the details around the auction, and then whether or not they have the winning bid and what they want to change their bid to, etc. Again, this has a lot of information within the catalog view, and this is really important for auctions because we need the user to be able to see almost immediately, heads up, what is actually going on with the state of this auction. The main takeaway that we want you to get overall is that the catalog system with the Clarity eCommerce platform has the ability to change dramatically within a single instance of our platform. We can change the presentation style for different categories, subcategories, or product types. And we can make it such that whenever your users are interacting with your catalog, if they're looking at it from an affiliate, if they're looking at it from a logged in customer view, maybe they're looking at a specific location that they've associated or chosen. Maybe they're logging in as a seller instead of as a buyer. You know, there are different presentation modes that are going to make sense, and we can meet those needs that you may have. We also have the ability to present the inventory data, the customer specific pricing, There might be price discounts based on different price levels or quantities or customer rewards, for example. And really, the list goes on. Maybe there are different types of product variants that we want to present. And just really, ultimately, there is a lot that we can do here dealing with digital products, memberships, and subscriptions. And if you're interested, we would love to chat with you more. And you can use our complimentary discovery to do this if you would like, or you can stay tuned to our YouTube channel and generally just access our website at clarity-ventures.com to get more information. If you found this helpful, we'd love for you to hit the like and subscribe, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching.